Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, we have another place of employment, and I believe this is going to be something that is going to come out a lot more readily and a lot more often, where some of your jobs and your places of employment are going to be revealed, that places you wouldn't think, places you wouldn't believe actually have displays of racism towards people of color, people who are black. So we have one in particular. This is out of Detroit Free Press, and it's a breaking news story. Nooses, Nazis, and racist slurs were tolerated at the GM plant, and now there is a lawsuit. And so you think these are places that, no one would ever believe would have this type of display of racism. Yet it is happening. And so we have a nice little article that talks about it. And so it's really sad because I had been talking about this in previous videos, that places that you wouldn't think, like the school systems, allow this type of racism to go on among staff. And now we have it in the GM plant. And you'll have people, they'll make comments underneath. I just erase them. The comments that they make, oh, that doesn't happen. Oh, you're just a race. You're just this, and you're just talking about that. And these are the people who actually you work around, who actually inflict these type of problems on people of color. They don't want to be exposed. That's the reason why they don't want you to talk about it. And they'll say everything negative to say that it isn't happening or that somebody is making it up when it in fact is happening. And so what I've learned is that a lot of time these things are happening on a lot of places of happening at a lot of places of employment, and the people who are allowing it to happen don't want you to talk about it because they don't want to be exposed, and they don't want people to start looking at these places of employment and you know getting lawsuits started, because they know that you have the right to do something like that now. So this is by Jamie L. LaRue out of Detroit Free Press, and it was published at 6 a.m. November 29, 2018. On March 22nd, 2017, General Motors, which is well known to many as GM, factory worker Mark Edwards was headed for his work area inside the company's transmission plant in Toledo, where he has worked since 2014. So Edwards is 59 years old. He's a black man. You can see him pictured here. And he turned the corner heading to his department and was met with an unbelievable sight. Someone had hung a noose by his workstation. Okay? And you will see it in a minute. I was startled, really startled by it, said Edwards, who took a picture of it. He took a picture of it so you can see it. So I couldn't believe someone did this. I couldn't understand who in my work area disliked me that much or had that much hatred to hang a noose by my job. So here he is pictured here. This is Mark Edwards. He's 59 years of age, and he's the plaintiff in a now ongoing lawsuit against General Motors. And this is him photographed right here. Okay. Edwards, who has worked for General Motors in various plants since 1977. He's been a loyal worker. He said that he has endured racial slurs and harassment for many years. See, and people don't realize that black people working as these professions at these jobs have had experiences. And some of us are trying to keep our jobs and we won't talk about it. And then when we talk about it, it's not looked at as being real, as being honored as it's truthful. We're looked at as we're crazy, we're making it up, we're fabricating something, or we're lying, or we're over exaggerating. When we really are experiencing racism on the job, and it happens daily. And a lot of times, it's sometimes the way people treat us as people that are black. And if you say anything against them, they threaten to fire you. So a lot of times, black people won't come forward unless it becomes extreme. And I say that again. A lot of times, black people will not report anything or won't come forward unless it becomes extreme, such as this man did. It became extreme to the point to where they were hanging nooses right in front of him at his job. And so he said he endured this for many years, that he has endured racial slurs, harassment for years from coworkers. He reported each incident to his union reps and managers, but he said nothing was done to end it. And so this is the reason why a lot of times black people will not report, because when they do, nothing gets done. And then if they do, it's like they never reported it because they don't do anything to follow up on these things. And a lot of time these people, they've been there for years. They've been allowed to get away with what they were getting away with. They tell you to go through the steps of the chain of command in order to make reports. By the time you're done and finished, they try to find something on you to get you fired. And so people are trying to hang on to their job because that's their lifeline. That's how they pay their rent, their mortgage, and their bills, and take care of their families. And so a lot of times it's hard because you don't want to be here today and gone tomorrow at a job. You want to have some longevity and build a work repertoire and a history. But a lot of times they won't allow you career advancement. They just allow you to stay in that one position, and you have to put up with a lot of harassment at these places of employment. And so this is what I've been sharing with people. And I think more African American and more black people should come out and speak their piece and have a comfortable space to speak it in, because I have experienced this very recent. And as a matter of fact, the thing is that a lot of people are trying to go into professions where they don't have to really be going through these type of situations or don't have to endure as much. And let me stress that they don't have to endure as much. Now, I got some comments recently on some videos I just made not long ago. And a lot of times the comments are very rude if they're coming from people who are racist. A lot of time they don't want you to talk about issues surrounding race because they're doing that to people at their workplace or where they live, or raising a lot of hell with somebody that hasn't done anything, just their skin color. They're black. And so a lot of times they'll make comments underneath to try to get you to feel intimidated or to feel like maybe it's you. And this is the way they treat us at work. Instead of them looking at the situation for what it really is, that it's a racial situation or it's a harassment on the job. It's all these things that they list in these applications saying we do not discriminate against people of color and against people from different backgrounds, religions, what have you. A lot of times, everything they say that they don't do is what they're doing. And you can't pinpoint which ones are doing it. And when they do, they don't want you to talk about it. And a lot of times, let me tell you, some of the reason is they always come up with this. Well, it's hard to fire those people who have been tenured. Tenured people who have been there and they probably planted their foot 10 years ago and they're in like Flynn. They have a longevity there and a repertoire. They got friends in the office, maybe people they know that work there that they're related to. And a lot of times they get in these jobs like that and they seal the deal. And what I say and seal the deal is they make it so that you can't fire them. And so they do this stuff to black people. And then when you report them, the person you're reporting it to could be their sister, could be their auntie. I've known that to happen a lot of times with people who are of Hispanic origin, that they hire relatives and they fire all the black people. Or they have one or two black people working there and they fire all the black people, and a few white people work there. They do the same thing. They will fire or they demote all the black people down to a lower position and have you stuck somewhere. They don't want to give you a letter of recommendation or references so you can move to the next job. And they make it hard for you to advance if you want to go higher up. So a lot of times you have to already be set in stone with your credentials. And sometimes that doesn't even help. They still demote you and put you down underneath somebody so somebody can always be finger whipping you at the job. So this is what happens. So it goes on to say that Edwards, who has worked for General Motors, he's worked in various plants since 1977. So he has longevity as well. But because he's black, this is what he's endured: racial slurs, harassment for years from coworkers, and he reported each incident to his union rep and manager, but they have done nothing to end it. So the noose was too much. And so that's the straw that broke the camel's back. So Edward said that in 1968, his then, 19-year-old brother was tied up by a rope and beaten in a racially motivated attack. So that brought back the memories of what he had actually really experienced. And this is very offensive to black people. Some people think it's a joke because they think it was something that happened so many years ago that it couldn't be offensive to people that you see of color now, because in our generation, people assume that doesn't happen anymore. But somebody may have had the experience and saw this happen. And from what I've been told, there's some places where they still do this to black people, but they try to get away with it and try to pretend like it's a suicide or it was an accident. And so this is still prevalent in some parts of the U.S. And so that rope took me back, he said. He said his brother, this is what happened to him. It left him and his brother was brain damaged behind that because it cut off the circulation into his blood flow to his brain. And so the rope took me back, Edwards told Free Press. I thought of my whole childhood all over again, being afraid and having to know I had to be strong. So Edwards and 8 other black workers are suing General Motors, alleging the company has allowed racial discrimination and has failed to take prompt corrective action after the workers reported acts of racism at the General Motors, which is called Powertrain and Fabrications plant. And some, like Edwards, still work there to this day, and others have quit or transferred to other General Motors plants because of the harassment. And so the suit seeks, now this is the noose, and this is what he saw. The noose was found on 22nd, 2017 at General Motors Powertrain Fabrications plant in Toledo. This is one of the 3, not just one of 3 nooses allegedly found at the plant. And so a group of black employees are suing General Motors for allowing the alleged racism to continue. So the suit seeks compensation for the loss of wages and mental pain that black people, or the black workers that work at General Motors, have endured. Beyond that, the plaintiffs want General Motors to fix the culture at the plant. Now, this is the problem. This is what I'm talking about. A lot of these jobs, it's not just at General Motors now. This is at other places of employment where things like this go on. And black people are afraid to report it because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. So they just transfer, they don't talk about it. And this is what's been happening. It's been prevalent. And I'm be honest, there are white people who accept this. They like this. They just had a woman who, in politics, who made jokes about this. And she thought it was funny. And they went ahead and elected her. So don't tell me that this isn't happening. Those people sitting up there making those comments, I'm going to delete your comment because it is happening. And you probably are participating in it. So once I get over there to my comment section, and if I see the comments that say that this isn't happening, your comment will be deleted, and you will no longer be able to comment anymore. Okay, so let's make that clear. So for its part, and General Motors said it has taken several steps to address improper behavior, even stopping production to train workers on anti-harassment. Oh, just like Starbucks did? That doesn't always work for some people. And anti-discrimination policies, they've also tried to train after the news was found. But they've had 3 of them. They said the noose, they've had 3 of them, probably more than that. This is just the ones that they're reporting. So discrimination and harassment are not acceptable and is in stark contrast to how we expect people to show up at work. Now that's what all the jobs will tell you. That we don't associate, or we are inclusivity, we're about everybody being included. They all say that because they don't want to get sued. That's pretty much what the problem is. And so it goes on to say that discrimination and harassment are not acceptable in stark contrast to how we expect people to show up at work, said General Motors in a statement. So General Motors is taking this matter seriously and addressing it, though, through appropriate court process or appropriate court process. So Nooses and the Klan. So about 1,700 people work at the plant in Toledo. And they build 6-speed, 8-speed rear-wheel drive transmissions and 6-speed front-wheel drive transmissions for General Motor trucks, sedans, and sports cars. So the lawsuit filed on September 21st in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio states about 11:30 p.m. on March 22nd, 2017. 3 nooses were found hanging from the ceiling and the valve in the casing machine department. Okay, on April and in May, the lawsuit alleges that 2 more nooses were. What did I tell you? There was more than 3. And it's probably still happening. Even after they had reported, it's probably happening more now. So it alleges that 2 more nooses were found hanging in the plant's assembly room, one of which a black worker reported to his supervisor. And so that has to be this guy in this article that's explaining his experience. So it says that the nooses, they symbolize lynching, a form of racial terrorism. I love that they use the word terrorism because they talk about terrorism so much in the U.S., but they never look at the racism that black people go through in this country as being terrorism. They look at it as isolated incidences of things that we just made up. But it is also terrorism as well. We've been terrorized in our own countries, on our own land. So it goes on, it says that the terrorism that escalated in the U.S. in the late 1800s and tapered off in the 1920s. And now it's starting all back over again. It didn't taper off. So it just was they were just being more quiet and more sneaky with it. And that's the way it is now. So the nooses set off a chain of racially charged actions by the white workers against black employees at the plant. And the lawsuit said this. And so in June 2017, for example, a white employee threw a rope that resembled a noose at a black employee. So they've gotten to the point where they don't even just plant or leave the nooses. They throw the nooses at black people at General Motors. The reason why they do that is because they don't want to see black people advance in a career. They don't want you having a job, and they don't want you working there. They make it an unfriendly, unsavory environment so that you can quit. They like seeing us homeless, not having anything, or not being anywhere, or being pushed all in one place, and being in a situation where we can't thrive for ourselves and our families. And so they make it virtually impossible for you to work in some of these places. Or they beat you down so that you have so much emotional stress and distress that you don't know what to do. And then when you go on disability, the disability is not as much. Doesn't pay as much. It won't help you thrive in a world where it's nothing but capitalism, and they raised rents and they raised bills on mostly everything. And so they've made it to where you basically are stuck at these places of employment unless you find another way out. And so that's pretty much what happens. So this is the excuse they give for this worker. I'm going to read that again so that some of these people who think that black people are making this up about the racism that they experience on this job can hear this. So the nooses that set off a chain of racially charged actions by white workers against black employees at this plant at General Motors, the lawsuit said this. So in June of 2017, for example, a white employee threw a rope that resembled a noose at a black employee. So GM suspended the white employee for about 30 days, but they didn't fire him. He can come back to his job secure. And under that horseplay rule, the lawsuit said this. Instead of them firing the man, they suspended him like he's a child, like it's a game. So this is the way they handle their discriminative employees. So the lawsuit described various other allegations or alleged incidents of racially hostile remarks and epithets in the last 4 years, including white employee calling a black employee boy, a female black employee being called a crude racist slur, swastikas that were painted and scratched on restroom stalls, stick figures of nooses around the necks drawn on restroom stalls. White workers wore shirts under their coveralls with visible Nazi symbols on them. Black employees told to be careful because a white employee's daddy was in the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, let me say that again. Black employee, he was threatened to be careful because white employee's dad was a part and in the Ku Klux Klan. White workers telling black workers to go back to Africa. Now, I've heard that a lot from Hispanic people at some of these jobs here in California. The ones that want to be white or look like they're more white or they can pass have said these, go back to Africa. And one while they were even saying because of the immigration issues, that how come they don't deport black folks? Now I have to add that in there. So they come over here with their own hostility and their racism. They first don't want you to deport them and be mean to them. But when they come here, and I'm saying that when they come here, they inflict the same hatred and racism on black folks that white people have done in some of these places of employment. And so they mimic it, and they've done it to black people who haven't done nothing to them. You can't see in history where black folks have done something to people like that. We're pretty much in the same boat. You would think they wouldn't do something like that, but it has happened. And so it goes on to say that white workers are telling black workers to go back to Africa. White only signs are hung on the restroom stall doors and written on walls outside of the men's restroom. And a white supervisor at a meeting was saying, now these are supervisors and managers, put them in it too. The administrators, they also get in on this. What's the big deal about nooses? You hear that? This is coming from a supervisor. There was never a black person who was lynched that didn't deserve it. Oh, he took it a step further. So the supervisor was not disciplined, and the lawsuit said this. Okay, let me stop for a minute there. I had an experience at a school where the teacher, she said, black girls develop more than the white girls do. And she said it in front of a parent, let's say that, and she wasn't disciplined for it. She wasn't fired. And they have specifically told us as employees that we are not supposed to say things like that. But because she was a teacher and she's in a higher position than some of the others, they didn't fire her, and she was white. So they don't discipline them. And so this is a perfect example right here. Let me read that again. A white supervisor And this was a lead teacher at this school I was talking about just a few minutes ago. They didn't suspend her and they did not discipline her. They said, oh, she didn't mean anything by it. That's the comment that I heard. She didn't mean anything by it. That was stereotyping people. Supposing I flip that around and say that white girls, they would have fired me. They would have disciplined me if I had said that as a black woman. They would have been all over me. I would have been written up. I would have got disciplined, probably got fired. But because she's white, she can say it and get away with it. So this white supervisor at a meeting, he's at a meeting in front of people. And he's saying, what's the big deal about nooses? Like it's nothing. It's nothing. Now you see why that lady in politics had been elected. Because they think it's a joke. And it isn't a joke. It's terrorism to black people. That's what it is. So says the supervisor, he said there was never a black person who was lynched that didn't deserve it. The supervisor was not even disciplined. So yeah, GM and many others have a big problem with racism. So GM's reaction, okay, let's go on to that. GM's reaction to alleged behavior did not just target black workers. In one instance, a white woman running for a union office happened to be dating a black man. Okay, so the lawsuit said this. So her election posters throughout the plant were defaced with racial slurs and drawings of black penises, the lawsuit said. Well, it says that they didn't just allege black workers. The reason why they targeted the white woman is because she's dating a black man. So yes, they are targeting black folks. And if you are associated with black people, then you get targeted in the mix. So the lawsuit said that GM failed to take prompt correction or corrective action in all the incidences. It created an atmosphere whereby hate-driven employees felt free to hang nooses, display racist graffiti, and verbally attack and racially insult African Americans at the place of employment at General Motors in Toledo. So these symbols of historical torture, and lynching of African Americans touch each of the plaintiffs. Okay? And they were personal affront to each dignity and cause each fear for his or her safety while they were working there. General Motors said it treats any of the reported incidents with sensitivity and urgency and is committed to providing an environment that is safe, open, and inclusive. There's that word, inclusivity. They use that a lot on these jobs. We're inclusive. We're inclusive of people. And they always say that. And the reason why they say that is because they don't want you to sue them. That's the reason why they use that terminology. And they have to do it because they want to keep in you know, with what it is that they claim that they're doing, you know, in terms of following the law of, you know, being inclusive of their employees. Okay. So I'm kind of panning down to the article. I want you to see the guy who, his name is Mark Edwards, for those of you that are just tuning in. He's 59 years old. He's the plaintiff in a lawsuit against General Motors. This is breaking news. Here he is photographed. And there were several nooses at the work site. And black employees who have complained about harassism, slurs, epithets, or the whole nine. It's accepted. It's tolerated, the racism among employees that are of white background, or white, and they've been threatened. Their lives have been threatened. Their livelihood of working there. You see, there's this on the restroom. They scroll whites only, and this is the noose that they found several of them, more than 3, and probably more than that. They've been threatened. That one of the white workers' daddy was in the Ku Klux where it says and is committed to providing an environment that is safe, open, and inclusive. So I said there's that word that they use at these places, these workplaces, because they're trying to keep from getting sued. But this one is getting sued because many of the black workers have been harassed racially. And so this is not, I just said this again, and I'm going to repeat it again. It's not just happening at General Motors. This is happening today in 2017, 2018. Okay. General Motors said that it worked with the union leaders on a memo, and it handed out to the plant workers the memo on April the 12th of 2017. So the memo referenced an incident that was offensive to all employees. A General Motors spokesman confirmed that the incident was the noose Edwards found on March 22nd. So the memo said that General Motors has zero tolerance. There's that other word, zero tolerance. They use inclusivity. These are all the key words that they use, but everything they say that they're not doing, or that they have zero tolerance and inclusive, they're not doing none of that. They're not doing none of that. And so that's just in keeping with the line of what the rules have in place, but they're not really following them. They just they say it, but they don't. They talk that talk, but they're not walking that walk, so to speak. And so it goes on to say that the memo referenced the incident that was offensive to all employees that are especially African American. A General Motors spokesman confirmed that the incident was a noose Edward found on March 22nd. So the memo said that General Motors has zero tolerance for the workplace violence and harassment, particularly if it relates to race, sex, ethnicity, age, religion, national origin. This is what the spiel that they give on these applications when you get hired. It's like a what they call like a repetitive statement they make, but they're not doing that. Okay, so this is what's on their application. It says that they have zero tolerance for the workplace violence, harassment, particularly if it relates to race, sex, ethnicity, age, religion, national origin, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity expression, and yada, yada, yada. So it also instructed on multiple ways to report problems. Okay, this is like in keeping with the work rule. So General Motors said it also did the following. General Motors conducted an ongoing reinforcement of the zero policy or zero tolerance policy through all employee meetings, small team meetings, and newsletters. Additional anti-harassment, anti-discrimination training took place for all employees in Toledo, jointly with the UAW, which is probably a union's organization. United Association for Workers, or United. I'm just abbreviation there, trying to fill it in the gap. So, in which production was stopped and all the employees had to attend this meeting. So it's just like a meeting that they did for Starbucks when they arrested those two black people, for sitting there and not bothering anybody, just being black. They got arrested in Starbucks, and I really didn't like how that was handled in the end. I think they should have sued them. Not, they said that they were supposed to do some things to help other people. They were trying to be noble, and that's what black people usually try to do. Try to not make too much out of it because we don't want to be called racist or race baiters and this, that, and the other. But that's what we experienced. We experienced that from those type of people. And so when we say anything about it, it's us that's the problem. Instead of us being victimized or harassed or terrorized by it, we're the problem. Like basically, just don't be here. And so that's a form of that's more than a form of terrorism. That just pretty much validates what we all been complaining about. And so it goes on to say that other GM plants conducted similar anti-harassment and anti-discrimination training in 2018, jointly with the UAW. You see the years in 2017, 2018, 2019. It's going to keep on going because people don't learn. So, civil rights ruling. Prior to filing the lawsuit, four of the plaintiffs filed complaints with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission starting at May 31st, 2017. And in the complaints, they described the nooses and the other incidences of racial action or racist actions. In the commission's report, the UAW local president Ray Wood said that after finding the first noose in March of 2017, he met with the plant's human resources director and the plant manager on how to move forward. He told the commission that he suggests the suggestions fell on deaf ears, which means they didn't even do anything about it. Because they're probably a part of it too. They just don't say anything and do anything. And that's their way of participating in it. By being silent and not taking action on these issues, you agree with what's been going on at these places of employment. You're just as much at fault as the person that is delivering all of these insults and this terrorism. So it goes on to say that the past March, that past March, the commission found probable cause that GM engaged in unlawful discriminatory practices. The commission denied GM's request in April for reconsideration. It ordered General Motors to immediately provide its employees with an environment free of harassment, intimidation, and hostility. In order It ordered that General Motors to establish an equal employment officer to train employees on anti-discrimination laws and write appropriate anti-discrimination policies and procedures for addressing and investigating any future complaints. That General Motors must also establish regular yearly training sessions with curriculum submitted to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission in advance. General Motors said it has no knowledge of racist acts at any of its other plants. We did disagree with the commission's findings. General Motors spokesman Pat Morrissey said, "So we fully cooperate with the investigations. This matter is no longer with the commission and has moved into litigation now." So General Motors really isn't as supportive as people would think they are. They just basically they're by rote going through their song and dance of what they have in their handbook, their work or employee handbook. But they're not in keeping step with actually carrying out all of these things to try to combat the hostility that's going on there. They're only suspending people. They're not taking it serious, and they have a supervisor that wasn't even fired. They're only suspending people. They're not firing people. The supervisor wasn't even fired by making a blatant comment about how nooses are not really that big of an issue. And that black people who got noosed, which one didn't deserve it? He questions it, saying that they deserved the terrorism. So basically, you have people there. If you have people in positions of power at these places of employment that have those beliefs, you best believe it harbors that environment. And that's what the black workers are going to feel. Even if they go through this song and dance of how they have a zero tolerance policy for discrimination and practices that are against people of color and a yada, 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 they're not doing that. That is just something that is scripted. That's so that when they're hit with a lawsuit, they just go through that song and dance. So action over money. Edwards, the guy that I showed in the picture, and the other plaintiffs want similar remedial relief as the OCR rule because our clients are firm that they are engaged in the litigation to exact real change in the culture of General Motors, said Michelle Voch, the plaintiff's lawyer and the partner in Roy Schechter and Voch in Birmingham. This lawsuit wants General Motors to immediately make the workplace free of harassment, intimidation, and hostility and fire those people, not suspend, fire those people responsible for it. And that's the problem. They do not fire these people. They let them stay on the job. They might write them up. And then they're back the next day, doing the same thing they've been doing, but worse. So it asks that General Motors takes security measures, including cameras or increased surveillance of the plant floor, and the General Motors immediately remove any racist graffiti. They let it stay up there so it can be on display for all to see instead of removing it immediately. Like Edwards Kenny Taylor, 58, has worked at the various GM plants since 1978. He still works at the Toledo plant, where he has been since in 2014. Even though he is part of the lawsuit against General Motors, he saw a noose left by Edwards area. But he has endured his own problems as well while he's been working there. He said, "When I go to the bathrooms, I saw Nazi symbols, and we know what those are, like swastikas on the walls, hate blacks, and blacks shouldn't be here, symbols on the wall," Taylor told the Free Press. So it hasn't gotten any better there. It's gotten worse, in fact. What did I tell you? Because when you start complaining, here we go, when you start complaining about stuff, nothing gets done, and you tell your union supervisor and nothing gets done. Taylor said that he was in the employee room in April of 2017 with Edwards. Edwards was seated at a computer monitor checking his pay stub when a white coworker approached and said, "You're in my chair," the N-word. So he called him blatant racial name. He proceeds to pull the chair from up under him in a real aggressive act, basically trying to snatch the chair from the black guy. So I caught myself before I touched the ground. So he almost fell. So this is what Edward said that had went on. So, and it's still going on. So he and Taylor say that they reported it to the union and the plant human resources. And they said that they would investigate and get back to me. And they never did. They never will get back to you because they don't care. That is why. So Edwards has said that this is what he experienced. So Taylor and Edwards have bills to pay. Here we go. They got bills to pay and are too young to retire, they said. You have a house, you have your family, you have your car, you have your rent and your mortgage and your bills to pay, and you have that your job is your lifeline so that you can thrive through life. And these people making an unsavory environment make you want to quit, but you can't quit because you have priorities and responsibilities. So you're asking for a safe, unterrorism work environment, an environment that's inclusive of black people, and you can't get it. Even if you go through the chain of command, you go through the steps that they claim, you'll get ignored. Or like what happened to me, she didn't mean anything by it. You get statements like that. But yet you're supposed to not say anything. You're not supposed to. But if I say something that's racist against somebody that isn't of color, that is white, I'm going to get fired. But if they say something, the white person says something, or the person that isn't black says something, they get a write-up, or maybe they get suspended, but they got their job. They got their lifeline, their livelihood. It's something that's set in stone. They know they're not going to get fired. Because you know why? Because the people that are in charge, they also are racist. That's why. So to conclude this article, it goes on to say that Taylor and Edwards, they have bills to pay and are too young to retire. Most times it is like that, they said. And so Edwards drives from Detroit and Taylor drives the 40 some miles from his home in Brownstown to the plant to work. And both admit it is tough in light of the lawsuit. And Taylor has put in a transfer to a different plant. And so this is the reason why black people end up having to switch from job to job. Not because we're incompetent or we're lazy, because we experience this on the job. They like to use the word, oh, black people are lazy. They won't work for us. They won't do this. But they don't tell you what we experience at these jobs, how they treat us. And that's the reason why some of us won't do anything, because we don't want to be treated like this. So it says that it's hard for them because they have to travel so far, and they're still going through this, even though they're going through litigation. Both admit it is tough in light of the lawsuit, and that Taylor has put in a transfer to a different plant. So it goes on to say that I hate to get off the exit when I'm on my way there. I think, what is it going to be like today? And so when he gets to work, he's already has that feeling of, oh, I gotta endure this hatred, this terrorism, this hating black people, and all this racism and harassment at work. What is it going to be like today? Said Taylor. You just feel the tension when you pull up in the parking lot, and there are Confederate flags on the license plates. And so that's basically the conclusion of this article. And so people have put Confederate flags on their license plates, and they pretty much set the tone that it's an unsavory and unsafe work environment. Here's a picture of one of the nooses in the workplace. A noose found on March 22nd, 2017 at General Motors powertrain and fabrications plant in Toledo. And this is only but one of 3 nooses allegedly found at the plant. So a group of black employees are suing General Motors for allowing alleged racism. And they say alleged, you notice that? It's almost like they want to say, well, we don't really know if this is racism or if this is a joke. So people don't take it serious. So this is one of the men who has worked there for many, many years. Says he's worked since 1977 in various plants. This is Mark Edwards. He's 59 years old. And he is a plaintiff in the lawsuit. And so this is what's been going on here. And these are some other people who stand behind him. Well, nooses, Nazis, and racist slurs tolerated at General Motors plant lawsuit says. Well, I will add with this and leave with this. General Motors is not the only place that harbors this type of atmosphere. Here in California, some of the schools have employees that have the same atmosphere going on in some of the schools, believe it or not. And I have mentioned this. I don't know if anybody else is bold enough to say it, but I am, and I'm saying it, that I have experienced this same type of thing. I haven't seen nooses, at least not yet. But what I have seen is I've seen the complicity where it's allowed. Certain things that are being said. I haven't seen any scrolls on the bathroom, but it's what's allowed and the way people are treated in the workplace that harbors an environment that you're not wanted, that they have an ethnic cleansing going on in some of these schools here in the California area. And so I wanted you all to know that. I'm not going to hide it, and I'm saying this, I have to say it in every video, that they treat the black employees and the black teachers like they're not wanted. And I'm going to say this too, that there are some people that want only the white people to be in command at some of these places. They don't want anybody that isn't white or that isn't Hispanic white looking to be in charge. They want somebody that looks that they don't want anybody that's black to be in charge of anything. They want only somebody that looks or appears to be white, or they're Hispanic white. They look like they're white. They could pass for white. They could have black relatives or black family members. But if they look the part, they pretty much got a longevity, a job for life. And you can do no wrong. And you only get written up. You don't get reprimanded. You don't get disciplined. At least not the corrective discipline. And so the same thing that's happening in General Motors plant is happening in other places of employment. I would bet that we will see more of these articles coming from places you wouldn't believe. I just did one about Facebook. Like, comment, subscribe. Thoughts, feedback within reason. Thanks for listening.